Hi, everybody, and welcome to Parlour Project Connections. My name is Kathy Paul, and I'm one of the founders of the Parlour Project. I have to thank all of you for joining us in this time of year as we start to move into spring. Everybody's getting a little excited to get outside, and we're starting to think about some new ideas around springing forward. Our question of the day, which is always a good one, is what steps should we take to spring forward? It seems like a daunting question. It seems like we have to take many big steps with the idea of change. We have a very special guest with us today, and I'd like to introduce all of you to Marcy Barbaro. She's with Calm Center. Marcy, thank you so much for joining us. And Marcy's actually a life coach, and she's got a few other tricks up her sleeve with some other things that she does as well that we'll let her share with all of us. Welcome to the show, Marcy.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Kathy. I think you guys are doing amazing work with the Parlour Project.
Thank you so much. We hope everybody at home gets to enjoy some of the learnings, especially when our parlor isn't open right now. And as a note, we are actually just coming up on our 1-year anniversary this March. When we started a year ago on the Parlour Project, we were looking at building community together and finding different ways to connect one another. And Parlour Project Connections is an extension of that. Thanks so much.
Oh, yes. And I enjoy the things you're putting out there. And I hope people are telling other people about this resource in the community too.
Thank you. And on that note, telling other people in the community about resources, I'd love if you could share with us today, some of the techniques as a life coach you might share with your clients that might be useful to our listeners or our audience and helping yourself move forward in times of change.
Yeah, it's funny you should ask, because last night I was on a group coaching call with about 9 women, and this was the very question that we put forth. We brainstormed, how do you move your energy when you're stuck? And there was some great stuff like get out in nature, watch puppy videos, cuddle your pets, reach out to a friend, take deep breaths, watch a funny movie. And I love all that stuff, but let's be really honest. In addition to that, sometimes it feels really heavy. And so I think the greatest lesson I've had in the last few years is to be aware that we are in charge of our thoughts.
Excellent.
And so I want everyone to do a fearless personal inventory. If you keep feeling yucky, if you keep feeling scared, if your anxiety or your worry is at an all-time high, then I really want to recommend that you take a minute with a piece of paper and start writing down what you're thinking about. And maybe even ask yourself, where am I getting these thoughts that are always in my mind? Is it from my significant other? Is it from the news? Is it from Instagram? And then, are these thoughts serving me? And if they're not, then you might have to put some effort in to switching out those thoughts to something that is less harmful.
That's a fantastic tip. And I'm taking notes as we go here because they're great words. I love the idea of are my thoughts serving me? Is there some strategies that if they're not serving me, maybe you could share with our audience and myself?
Yeah, so first of all, always, Kathy, when we want to affect change, we have to have self-awareness. So if you're kind of sticking your head in the sand and, like all of us putting on an extra 5 pounds or 10 pounds over COVID, and you're like, no, it's just, I put these pants in the dryer, let's get real, okay? And we can do this on an emotional level too. For example, if you're watching a lot of crime shows with a lot of killing and dark kind of themes, and then you're noticing that your energy is down, well, take responsibility for that and say, even though it might be intriguing and it challenges me intellectually, and I like a little bit of a jump scare or tension in my television watching or my Netflix selections, I'm noticing that my mood is really low. So this awareness piece is number one. And if I can bring that example into the real world, if you're keeping company either virtually or in person with someone who has a perpetually bad attitude and is ramping up your anxiety, then you need to either address it with that person or you need to spend less time with them. And if that's someone in your house, then there's going to have to be a courageous conversation. Like, hey, do you mind if we switch things up a bit? Like, I'm noticing that I'm struggling. And our habit of eating a big meal, getting in front of the television for 4 hours or 3 hours before bed, and then going to bed and starting and working and going through the whole cycle again. I'm not thriving here.
Thriving is a great word. When you look at thriving and you use the word thriving, can you describe what someone who's thriving might feel like?
I will, but first I want to talk about perfectionism. And as I get into these details, I want to remind you that perfectionists are a bore. Okay, I am like a closet perfectionist. I'm one of those people who walks around saying that I'm not a perfectionist, and then I'm literally going to jump up and fold the throw on the couch the second you're done with it. Okay, so full disclosure here. I am a recovering perfectionist. So what does thriving feel like? Okay, so for me, I'm a woman in her 50s, and damn it, I have realized now that good health is number one, be it mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, sexual, whatever it's going to be. I want to feel good. And so I am drinking water. I am moving my body. I'm getting good sleep. I'm removing toxicity from my life. I'm reading stuff that lights me up. But thriving is really like when your feet hit the floor in the morning. What's the very first thought that comes into your mind? Is it, damn, I didn't get enough sleep? Or, geez, I got to go to work? Or, instead, I urge people in my coaching program, the very first week, your number one responsibility is to pull a positive thought into your mind the second you wake up in the morning. And I actually put it as a reminder in my phone at 6 a.m. every day. So on those days that I kind of wander a bit and I do wake up thinking, I didn't get enough sleep, I'm like, oh yeah, today is a delightful day. Abundance is coming to me in expected and unexpected ways. And that's just one of mine, but you're going to come up with your own personal one. And this is all part of the thriving. I ask you, how do you want to feel? And then you're going to begin with that awareness and start working away at it without that spirit of perfectionism.
Fantastic. And I too am a recovering perfectionist, so I understand the throw demonstration. And I really enjoyed hearing you talk about thriving. I look at thriving in many ways myself. And as you started to touch on ideas of what thriving might feel like, you brought new ideas to my mind on what we could do. What are the benefits in your practice around presence for those that might be struggling with change?
Yeah, so mindfulness is kind of the word that's been thrown around the last decade. And so I know everybody and anybody at some point has been told, you got to start meditating. And in my experience, because I've worked as a yoga and meditation teacher for a decade, that is like a scary obstacle. People think you have to sit still and you have to hum and all these things. So instead of practicing meditation, I suggest doing activities that are meditative. So that is a repetitive activity that is actually going to calm you down. So for some, that might be knitting. For somebody else, it might be going for a run. It could be washing dishes by hand, and so what we want to do is calm ourselves to the degree that now I can drop into my body and see what is happening. Are you clenching your gut really tight? Does your chest feel heavy? Are your shoulders rolled in? Are you having trouble getting a full breath? So these are all indications. So this is presence, like be present now. As human beings, we always want to race forward in the future because we think busy and productive is how we achieve our value as human beings. And sometimes we also will spend hours ruminating in the past. So maybe there's a trauma or a tragedy that happened in your past and you just live with it every day. Well, guess what? We have a choice. And the choice begins with this term called mindfulness. And so where am I now? Am I in the past? Am I jumping forward to next week, next year, next month, spring, summer, thinking when COVID's over? Or am I making myself live right now and see what's happening in my body? And that's the beginning. That's the beginning of really achieving something I like to call as emotional freedom. You're going to get out from under the things that are really weighing you down.
That brings together such a visual for me. The idea of something literally sitting on you or weighing you down and stopping you from progressing. You've touched on some wonderful points today. I can't get over your enthusiasm. It's just beautiful, just beautiful. Thank you so much, Marcy. Now, you mentioned earlier that you had spent some time doing as a yoga instructor as well. Have you pulled in any of the tips from your physical side of wellness into your coaching that you might want to share with others?
Absolutely. One of my favorite ones that you can do, well, first of all, when you're doing an activity where you're concentrating, I want everyone to check in and see if you're holding your breath. I mean, for me, every time I'm at the cutting board in the kitchen chopping up vegetables, I hold my breath and I like constrict everything, right? And when we're breathing, everything's moving. The diaphragm's moving, the abdominal's moving, the chest is moving, and on the back too. Don't forget your lungs are on your back body. And so number one is the breathing. One of the techniques I use all the time with people is breathing in through the nose and then pursing your lips like you're going to blow bubbles in a straw and just blowing out long and slow. And don't do 20 because you might hyperventilate and fall over. Do 3 or 4. And almost everybody I know has a smartwatch now. And so I want to ask you to check your heart rate a few times a day and be like, oh crap, like I'm at 83 beats per minute. What am I doing? And then do a few of those breaths and notice how you're going to drop down. And then you're like, oh, I have a semblance of control. And that's like a great feeling. During this last year, many of us have lost personal freedoms of some form or another. And so we're struggling with this feeling of whether we're in control of our lives or not. And that will drive up our anxiety, lead to a lot of sleepless nights. So these kind of yoga and breathing, like I'm not saying go buy yoga pants and start doing poses. If you want to do that, all the power to you. It's wonderful. But everyday things like being aware of your breathing. Am I clenching? So this is tension in the hand. This is tension in the hand. These are relaxed hands.
Honestly, I know I could talk with you all day. We are going to come to a close with our call with one another. And I want to thank you very, very much for all the excellent advice that you've given us. Until we talk to you again, Marcy, have a wonderful day. And thanks so much for joining us on the Parlour.
It was my pleasure, Kathy.